Hi, today's video is the second in my Valentine cards for 2016. This easy and quick card features a really cute stamp. I will be doing some watercoloring as we go through this. I'm by no means an expert, but I will go over some of the basics. I will also be doing some embossing, so of course this means have your embossing buddy on hand. I will list the materials, but everything is listed down in the comment section so you can get all the measurements there. I have a red card base cut 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4.25. I also have a black mat out of cardstock cut at 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I have some pattern paper which I've cut at 4 inches by 5 1/4. And I have another black mat cut at 3 3/8 by 4 1/8. I have another panel cut from watercolor paper. You don't have to use watercolor paper, but it turns out better. This is cut at 3 1/4 by 4. I also have a white panel for the inside cut at 4 and 5 1/4. If you didn't use a darker color for your card base, you can skip that step. I also have white scrap at least 2 inches and a black scrap at least 2 inches square. Of course, I have bigger here. The stamp I'm using is Heart Kiki by C.C Designs. I have a few other of these stamps. I have PJ Emma, and you can see that I used the mask with this stamp before. Beachy Beatrice. She has 2 cute little ponytails. Devilish Lucy. I started to make the card out of this one, but in the end, I decided to do Kiki. Birthday Lucy, who's holding a little stack of presents, very cute. And Beauregard's Pencil, holding a very big, oversized pencil. It's very quickly, you could overshoot your stamping budget with so many cute stamps. I'm also using Sealed with Love by Stampin Up. I also have grabbed a narrow sentiment which reads, "Do what you love, do it often." I got this from one of the dollar stamp sets sold in the bulk bins of my craft store. You can use any sentiment as you like as long as it's narrow enough to fit the space. I'm also using 2 Stampin' Up tag punches, the 1.5 and the 1 3/4 inch punch. If you didn't have punches, you can cut out the stamp by hand, tape it down to black cardstock, and trim around the edge, leaving a narrow border on all sides. The inks I'm using are my old standby Versafine Onyx Black Memento Lady Bug ink. I'm also using the black Soot Distress ink to distress the panel edges. I'm also going to be using a Spectrum Noir sparkle pen as well as a small red bow embellishment. And I'll be, of course, since I'm using watercolor pencils, I'll be using my waterbrush to blend out the colors. Now it's time to stamp the watercolor panel. Because I'm going to be embossing, I'll need to run my embossing buddy over the entire surface of the panel. And I also do the same thing for the white scrap. I want to ensure that no embossing powder sticks where I don't want it to be. I need to have the clear embossing powder ready to go once I stamp the image. The embossing powder will stick to the image as long as it's still wet. You can do this with any ink. It's easier with the pigment inks than the dye inks because the pigment inks stay wet longer. I took the time and cleaned the stamp when I should have just went right ahead to the embossing powder. But luckily it was still wet enough and this worked out very well. I keep my clear embossing powder in a large tub with a little spoon. I learned this trick from Jennifer McGuire. and I'm going to heat emboss it off camera. Now the sentiment is thinner than the girl stamp, so I need to bring back in the stamp mat for the Misty. And I'm lining it up where I need it to be. And then transferring it to the door. And inking up. This is the same steps that you would take for any stamp using the Misty. And once I'm sure I got a good impression, I'm going to put the embossing powder on it and heat it. Now I'm going to emboss the tag. The tag is a wooden stamp, so I'm going to bring in my Stampin' so that I can be sure that I get a straight, thick impression when I press down, because sometimes with this stamp, it doesn't quite go all the way through, and that's why the Stampin' will help. I'm just holding the paper down and pressing straight down and straight up. And I wasn't quite happy, so I gave it a second impressed. And it's good now. Now I'm bringing in the smaller of the two punches, and I'm going to punch out the tag. You turn it over and line it up, and once you're sure you have it where you want it, you just press it. And taking the black paper and get the larger punch. As I mentioned before, if you did not have these two punches, you can just cut the stamp out with a pair of scissors and line it up on the the black paper, and then just cut it out with a little border around it. Now to the coloring of the girl. I did a pre-coloring so I could find out where I wanted all the colors. I start off by coloring the face, the arms, and the legs with light peach all over. Next, I get the lightest of the browns that I have, and I highlight around the hairline, along the chin, and on the left side of the arms and the legs to add a little bit of color. And then I use the next darker color of brown and just do the same thing, blending out a little bit as I go. Finally, I get the darkest brown, and I have to be really careful not to mess up the coloring at this point and make it streaky. Finally, I go over the whole face again with the peach, blending all the colors together. You can keep adding the browns until you're happy with the skin tone that you have. Next, I'm going to move on to the hair, and I went over the entire hair area with the light peach. Just making sure to cover all the white and get a good layer of the peach down. And the motion that you need to do with hair is to use a flicking motion with your hand. And this adds the most realistic looking texture for the hair. And you just flick up and down, following the natural nape of the hair and then around the neck, and add the color one by one from the lightest to the darkest brown. I could have added a little bit more brown here and there, more streaks, a little bit more texture, but I was happy with the way the hair came out, so I decided that was enough. And now moving on to the rest of the body. The coloring is the same steps throughout, so I just sped it up. You start with your lightest color, you put a layer of it all over, and then you bring in the darker shades and shade it from the left to the right. And just keep coloring until you're happy with the outcome. The last step I did was to add a little red around the cheeks to give it a rosy cheek look. And now that the coloring is all done, I'm going to bring in my water pen and start blending out the colors. You just need a piece of paper towel to clean your brush between colors. And you give it a little squeeze to start the water flowing. The thing to remember when you're watercoloring with your water brush is not to color the areas that are side by side to avoid running the colors into each other. And I just go and blend from the color to color, jumping around from the light area to the dark area. And I keep going until I have all the color blended like I want it. And now I'm getting the distress ink and the blending tool, and I'm going to distress the edges. I'm going to spend a little bit extra time on the corners to give it a little bit extra there and darken it a little bit more. And now moving on to the inside of the card. I decided to keep it really simple because the outside was so pretty. So I stamped a sentiment, Happy Valentine's Day. And I didn't remember to put my stamping pad in, so I didn't get a good imprint. One side didn't show up very well, so I grabbed my stamp pad and flipped the paper over and tried again. The stamp pad is really important when you're working with photopolymer stamps. And that looks much better. I'm also going to put a row of hearts just below the lettering. Now to move on to the assembly of the card. I'm grab my bone folder and I am pressing the seam on the card base to make sure I get a good crease, and I'm taping the inside panel, making sure that I keep it straight when I put it in. Next, I am taping the watercolor panel down to the black mat. Notice I'm using a great deal of adhesive because the watercolor panel buckles a little bit because of the extra moisture. And I don't want it to deform after it goes on the card. And now I'm just taping down the pattern paper on the last mat. And I realized that I cut it a little bit short, so it's not quite enough on one side, but that's okay. I'll just live with it. And I grab my tape gun so I don't use up my little tape runner. One last check to make sure that I didn't put it on upside down, and put it on the front, keeping it as straight as possible. Mounting up the tag on the mat and have that ready to go. And the sentiment panel, I want it to be popped up on foam tape. You could use fun foam for this, which will give it a solid foam base and pop it up and give it a little bit more stability. but I decided since I'm not going to put this in the mail to just use the foam tape. It gives it enough, I think. But if you were to use the fun foam, you would just cut it a little bit smaller than the panel and put tape on the fun foam. And now the panel onto the front of the card. And I want the tag to be partially over the panel, partially over the outer card. So I need to put a little bit of foam tape on the bottom and adhesive tape on the top, so the part that sticks over will have stability. And I'll grab the red bow as a final touch. Next, I grab the Spectrum Noir sparkle pen and add a little bit of shine onto the bow and onto the heart. You can't really see it on the video, but it really, really sparkles. And that's the card for today. I hope you like it. I hope you'll try it yourself. It was really simple and it went together really, really fast. I hope you found some techniques that you can use in your card making. Thanks for watching. Take care.